Hala Garani for us in Israel and Matt Bradley for us in Lebanon. Thank you both so much for getting us started. While hospitals in Gaza run out of fuel, Hamas is hoarding fuel as it continues attacks against Israeli forces. That fuel is not only used for attacks, but to also generate electricity for Hamas's infrastructure inside Gaza. Anna Schechter, a member of NBC News' investigative unit, joins me now. Anna, knowing that you and I were going to have this conversation, I was so struck when Hala Garani, our colleague, said, obviously, fuel is off the table. Talk to me about the role that those demands are playing, both in terms of getting aid in and getting hostages out.
It's a terrific question, Alicia, because fuel is central to the complex negotiations going on right now. You have more than 200 hostages who are in the subterranean world of tunnels underground, and it doesn't seem that Israel or the U.S. knows exactly where they are, and yet Hamas is saying, well, we'll release them if we get fuel. So Hamas needs a tremendous amount of fuel to continue to operate underground. That fuel goes to generators to clean the air in the tunnels and to provide electricity in the tunnels. So that's how Hamas has been able to orchestrate and create this subterranean world that is incredibly difficult for the IDF to fight. So the reason that Hamas continues to push for fuel, they are using the hostages as bargaining chips. And this is a complex international negotiation. So the Qataris are heavily involved, the US is involved, and Hamas is demanding fuel. And the Israelis are saying we cannot allow any fuel to go to Hamas because they will continue to fund their war machine, continue to use the fuel to keep going in those tunnels. The fuel, by the way, is also used to manufacture the weapons that Hamas is using to fire rockets into Israeli territory.
You mentioned the hostages, and I want to ask you about that. You report, quote, documents found on the bodies of Hamas militants suggest that broadcasting atrocities online was a planned part of the attack, which killed more than 1,000 civilians, including children and babies. Facebook bans Hamas, and yet these videos have showed up on multiple platforms. What does it tell us about this moment and the challenges of social media companies not allowing videos like this to exist online?
You're fixing to listen to something that whenever I first heard it, I said to myself, this needs to be recorded. And I guess it goes back to the point of, if you can think it, if you can put it on paper or put it on film, somebody will probably end up doing it. I don't remember the name of the movie, but there was like people that was putting this stuff on live video in this movie, and the way that I remember it, I don't remember exactly, but seemed like there was somebody drowning in a tank, and this person had to save that person. I may be getting the movies mixed up, but there has already been Hollywood movies that has produced people using social media platform, weaponizing it to bring that much more terror, traumatizing not just the victim itself, but now victimizing the whole family and everybody that was on that particular Facebook page pertaining to their platform. And to be quite honest with you, we are reaching levels of evil right now that I don't even think some of the sharpest minds that have been involved with social media pertaining to Elon Musk or Zuckerberg or whatever his name is that created Facebook and all these other social media platforms, I really don't think that any and everybody has thought this stuff out pertaining to social media and how that it can be used in psychological warfare and basically weaponized for the benefit of the victims. And if you think things is hairy right now, wait until it becomes even more advanced pertaining to robotics, pertaining to drones pertaining to holograms. Whenever you can create a hologram, and let's say a person has got a regular routine that they go to church on Sunday and they usually sit on aisle four, four pews down. That's their little warm spot. Okay, and let's say that the person that was going to commit the crime committed a hologram, and now that Sunday, everybody, you got all these different alibis that's telling everybody, no, we seen George. He was down on aisle 4 over there on pew 3. He always sits in the same place, and I know that I've seen him. And let's say that they even have video in the church, and they run the video, and sure enough, there's George sitting on pew 3 that looks like George, but then you got to really look really close to realize maybe it ain't George. Maybe it's an imposter. Maybe it's a duplicate of George. While the person that's creating the alibi is now going and committing some sort of a crime, and God only knows what kind of crime that he or she could be committing, because anybody that would go through to that extent of using social media and weaponizing it that way, God only knows what kind of crime that they'd actually be committing if they actually done something like that. So, I've said this before, I'll say it again. The military that released this stuff into the public, and various people that created all these social media platforms, as far as I'm concerned, they have released something out into society that is worse than the pandemic COVID. And I know that that's saying something due to the fact that we had over 1 million people die in this country alone. I don't know what the death count was all the way across the board worldwide, but that's saying something. And I know what I'm saying because I've said it before. It's as if it is a Trojan horse. Everybody thought that it was going to be the best gift to God, the best thing since toilet paper come out. Now we're realizing, if you get through watching this, now you'll realize just exactly what I was talking about pertaining to the Trojan horse. Please watch.
So unique and so unprecedented, where you have Hamas fighters infiltrating a village filled with civilians, taking control of these people, forcing individuals to open their Facebook apps so that they can use it to live stream abductions, live stream killings, or even open up a Facebook app, take a video of killing a grandmother who's bleeding out and post it to her Facebook page so that her family opens her Facebook page and sees it. This kind of brutality is so unexpected, and yet for Facebook, their position is there's no way we could have anticipated it.
Matter of fact, I put it in the same category coming out of the pits of hell that I do fentanyl. As far as I'm concerned, the drug fentanyl come from the axes of evil from the pits of hell. And because these social media platforms are basically a Wild Wild West show, I would put it on the same danger list. And I know whenever I say that, there's going to be a lot of people that's going to say, man, this guy, he's really way out there in left field. No, I'm not. I knew that whenever it come the way that it come, towards it just being dumped in people's laps, people were scared to death of this. Now you're fixing to see why and listen what's going on. And it's really, I'm really not surprised that it hadn't already occurred due to the fact that whenever I watched that movie, I thought to myself, my God, what if people actually did start doing that? I think they was using their own social media they was weaponizing it for a tool to be able to gain popularity pertaining to how many viewers that they could get to watch them kill this person. I don't forget the name of the movie, but I know whoever's a movie fan, they'll be able to understand what I'm talking about.
What we're seeing is the result of creating a platform where anyone can click a button and live broadcast anything. What's unique about this is that the terrorists who attacked actually took the victims' phones, forced them at gunpoint to open those applications and broadcast out to their families, friends.
Stay on that point because I've only got about 30 seconds left, but I do want to ask you, when you have spoken with those families, what have they said?
The trauma that they experienced opening their loved ones' Facebook feeds and watching these horrific videos of their family members dying or cowering in terror as they're being abducted. The actual act, the horrific acts that were carried out, that is beyond imagination. But then when you're watching a video on your phone, it's so traumatic to watch that. That's what these families are telling me, that they just wish that they had not had to witness it in the way that they did.
NBC's Anna Schechter. Anna, thank you.
This is all part of the prophecy where it says that in the last days, Satan will come down in great wrath, in beknowing that his time is short. Our planet right now is going through something such as even myself only dared to imagine that would occur, that now is basically occurring. And it's really, really sad that these platform makers did not put restrictions, side rails, policy holders. As far as I'm concerned, these people need to be held accountable. They need to be held accountable because they have engineered something into the eyes of the public that looked good on the front end, but now we're realizing just exactly how horrifying that these mechanical inventions, these devices, can actually become. I personally rather die a dignified death than to watch my loved ones suffer and then die, especially if I had to witness it on mainstream whatever. That would affect me to no end. And to this day, I guess the medical industry still has a strong policy that if any way possible, if a patient comes through the door in the emergency room and it belongs to either the nurses or the doctors that's performing whatever that they're doing, by and large, they'll separate that person. They'll get that nurse away or they'll get that doctor away because it is so emotionally distressing that they cannot do their jobs properly. When you're talking about psychological warfare being weaponized with social media, I really, truly believe that it needs to be looked upon in a much more clear understanding. And if there's anybody that needed to pull the plug pertaining to the satellite, whoever's in control of the satellite up there, if there's anybody that needed to pull the plug on anything or anybody, that's whenever the plug needed to be basically pulled to the point that they couldn't use this as a weapon. Now, I don't know if our government is in control of these social media platforms. I don't know if our military is in control of these social media platforms. But whenever it reaches the level that now you're affecting thousands, if not millions of other people in a collateral data form, then somebody needs to evaluate social media platforms.
Much for being with us. Still to come, for many Jewish Americans, Israel's war with Hamas is dredging up traumatic memories. We're going to hear from a 97-year-old Holocaust survivor. And later, with their party in shambles and just days from a government shutdown, House Republicans play a dangerous game with aid for Israel and Ukraine. But first, to Richard Louie with the other big stories we're tracking this hour on MSNBC. Richard?
Thank you, Alicia, and a good evening to you. Recovery efforts now underway in northwestern Nepal after a 5.6 magnitude earthquake hit Friday at midnight there. Authorities say at least 128 people are dead, dozens more injured. The death toll is expected to rise as communications channels are reestablished. Breaking news also in the ongoing SAG-AFTRA actors strike. SAG-AFTRA confirms it received what studios call their, quote, last, best, and final offer. Union leaders say they need more time to review and respond to that offer. Should they accept it, it would end a 114-day strike in Hollywood. And a toddler accidentally shot himself at a Las Vegas preschool. Police say the gun was left at the playground by a teenage suspect after allegedly shooting another man. Both the toddler and the man are hospitalized. The suspect is in custody. More American Voices after this break.
It's out of control. It is totally out of control.
Are you being audited? And
if it ain't man-made disasters, it's forces of nature disasters. And the disasters are just coming in leaps and bounds. Leaps and bounds. Leaps and bounds.
About power, a hunger for that as well. He had his convictions.
Sickening. It's really sickening how we're being invaded right now on every level, in every continent. It's really sickening.
Trump's on trial. What we learned from the testimonies of Don Jr. and Eric Trump and the explosive drama involving the judge in the case. Plus, can the ex-president be disqualified from running for office? That argument was put to the test in a Colorado courtroom this week. And taking action, Senate Democrats are set to subpoena influential conservatives with close ties.
Wow.
Israel to achieve its objective, to defeat Hamas.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is rejecting calls for a temporary ceasefire, saying the country's military will only pull back when Hamas frees all of its hostages. He adds his country will also continue to block fuel from entering the region. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department is urging Americans in Lebanon to, quote, leave now. It comes as Hezbollah's leader is threatening to interfere in the war. The U.S. and Middle Eastern leaders are working to prevent the conflict from escalating.
Countries across the Middle East and beyond have played an essential role in preventing its spread. We all agreed on the importance of using our...
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
The Peace Coalition of Southern Illinois hosts these peace and justice vigils monthly, joining around communities around the world in demanding a stop to the war from both sides. The coalition says that they want to see an end to the siege of Gaza, the hostages released, and respect shown for humanitarian law.
There is no way there will ever be peace in that region if there isn't justice and human rights for everybody.
The coalition will hold its next Peace and Justice Vigil on Zoom on November 15th at 6 p.m. The community is praying tonight for the recovery of one Ballard Memorial High School senior who remains hospitalized in Nashville in a coma. Kenna Bodell is one of 5 Ballard Memorial High students injured in a car wreck 2 weeks ago. She's on the road to recovery, but still has ways to go. Dozens came out tonight to the City Park in Ballard County for a vigil in Kenna's honor, showing support, prayers, and hope. Those over the prayer service says that it's important for the family to know they're not alone, something that Kenna Bodell's mother says is helping them stay strong through her daughter's recovery.
when we are to rejoice with one another and we also suffer with one another. And nobody wants to go through these kinds of times in their life alone. So it's very important that you have a community, a faith-based community behind you that knows.
It really does blow me away. the amount of support and the things that everyone has done, and blessed us with, love offerings, but most importantly, the prayers and the love for her.
At the vigil, donations were accepted to help the family pay for expenses not covered by insurance.
Now, your Weather Authority first forecast.
All right, this afternoon overperformed on temperatures, forecasting the upper 60s this afternoon. We ended up in the low 70s, quite a bit warmer for this time of the year. Right now, as you take a look over the U.S. Bank Building in downtown Paducah, 54 in Paducah right now, along with Sturgis, Kentucky, Paris, Tennessee at 52. Currently, not much in the way of wind, giving a wind chill factor, also 54 across the majority of the region for this evening. High temperatures today in the low 70s for a lot of the region, 72 in Paducah, 73 Union City, Mount Vernon at 68, and we should be in the low 60s for this time of the year. Tonight, low temperatures are going to be closer to average. Low to mid 40s across Kentucky, mid to upper 40s across Tennessee, and heading into Illinois and Missouri, a little bit more variety from 37 in Mount Vernon to 39 in Harrisburg, 43 in Cape Girardeau, and Sykeston at 46. But that's going to be the start of a warmer stretch along with some windy conditions. Coming up, we'll have the hour-by-hour forecast with the rain heading in next week.
We are just days away now from Kentucky's statewide election on Tuesday, November 7th, and the deadline for early voting is now over. This is gubernatorial candidates Daniel Cameron and Andy Beshear are in a dead heat, tied at 47% each, according to a new Emerson College poll. A month ago, Beshear had a 16-point lead. It's why both have been making last-minute campaign pushes in West Kentucky this week. Cameron had multiple stops in our area the last few days, here speaking to dozens in Murray Wednesday, and then Thursday in Mayfield, and finally Paducah. And yesterday it was Beshear's turn, his first stop Murray, then a final stop in Paducah, speaking to hundreds of supporters. If you haven't voted yet, polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Tuesday, Election Day. For more information about where you can vote, look for this story at WPSDLocal6.com. And GOP presidential hopefuls gathered in Florida today for the state's Republican Party's Freedom Summit.
I don't want to hear about all that. I'm sure it's
He has
interesting.
worked on the front lines to fight back against the virus that's taken away so many people he's loved.
I would say anywhere from 25 to 50 people.
Turning his pain into purpose, 20 years ago, he created the nonprofit Williams and Associates to address health disparities throughout the St. Louis metro.
What was the youngest person that you have to give a positive result to?
Good question. 15.
Williams knows the importance of easy access to testing and treatment, meeting those infected with sexually transmitted infections in St. Louis City and County.
Education, prevention, wellness. That's what it's all about.
On Friday, alarming data from the health department shows an increase in HIV and syphilis cases in pregnant women and babies. 2020.
That is so sad.
2021 had the highest number of cases since 1994.
It doesn't surprise me, but it saddens me.
A community-based approach down Grand Boulevard with Novus Health and Williams and Associates to treat HIV and STIs at this new facility on site.
If they get someone who needs treatment, they send them to us immediately and we'll treat the same day.
CEO Dale Wrigley will open Novus Health in March of next year to bring medicine to communities struggling to get care.
We run a STD walk-in clinic, and that clinic saw 18% positivity rate for syphilis. We saw 2% in HIV, and that may not sound like a large amount, but compared to the number of people we tested, it is.
The facility is partnering with pharmacy Greater Health and Wellness to make the treatment process a one-stop shop, working together to reduce the number and destigmatize STI cases.
We want people to know they're welcome here, and again, but we want to serve everybody.
Work that's vital to save people in a city that needs it.
I don't see it as a job, but a life mission.
Well, if you were able to get out and enjoy the weather today, you're going to enjoy it tomorrow. And if you didn't get outside, I recommend getting that vitamin D tomorrow. We are seeing lots of sunshine and those temperatures slowly creeping back up into the 60s. But as for tomorrow morning, we are going to start off a little bit chilly in the mid 40s and then gradually increasing into around 60 by 10 a.m. Partly cloudy skies for the morning, clearing out by the afternoon. Taking a look across the heartland.
That was a very, very unusual weather backdrop. Look at that backdrop. I don't know who thought of that, but man, that's artistical right there. They done a good job.
60 by 10 a.m. Partly cloudy skies for the morning, clearing out by the afternoon. Taking a look across.
Do his cries, Christina, of collateral damage match up with the reality that we are seeing? They aren't helpless children here. They're grown adults who held executive positions in a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah, and Eamon, let's not forget, they held major positions in the U.S. government as well when their father was president, which makes me just shudder. But, you know, as Suzanne said, this sort of chaos strategy, you know, let's just try and distract from the reality at hand. The emails are there, you know, as the kids say, they have receipts. But we'll say, well, the judge is biased. Now the clerk is biased. And it's just a witch hunt on our family. But anyone who's lived in New York knows that the Trump organization has always, you know, leaned on the line of legality, and they've always sort of skirted the law. And Donald Trump said so himself when he was campaigning, you know, why pay taxes? Only fools pay taxes. So we know that there's something there. And Eric Trump, because he had such a bad day in court, you know, is now going to say, like, this is...
He's a scoundrel. He's admitted he was a scoundrel with the snake, poetic, whatever you call it.
It's a good name for the company, and then he changed it to X. I like Twitter because...
Guy's a scoundrel.
Here are our most...
In your feet, get relief.
In a significant drop in the number of individuals from Venezuela encountered at our southern border. Two, we have sought from Congress additional funds for the hiring of additional field office personnel in Customs and Border Protection and other resources to address the chronically underfunded U.S. Customs and Border Protection and other federal agencies. And three, we are hopeful that the broken immigration system under which we operate will be fixed.
Thank you. As you know, Arizona communities are at a breaking point. We don't have sufficient resources to handle the high numbers of migrants, and the Shelter and Services Program is not doing enough to support them. One of the major issues is that FEMA is not allowing any margin of error for A numbers. We've spoken about this before. With so many migrants being released each day, the NGOs are struggling to keep up, and there's a natural amount of human error. FEMA has stated that there's no allowance for human error, and anytime there's a mistake in an A number, the NGO does not receive reimbursement for services for that migrant. Additionally, handling sensitive A numbers without any guidelines or best practices creates significant liability for Arizona's NGOs. As you and I have spoken, I've requested that FEMA, and indeed said that they must, include a 3 to 5% allowance for a margin of error for recording A numbers. FEMA must also include guidance for NGOs on how to safely handle this sensitive information. Is this something that DHS can administer and implement administratively? And if so, will you commit to working with me to support the NGO network in protecting confidentiality and providing services?
Senator, I do commit to working with you, to continuing to work with you on this issue. There is a tension here. On the one hand, you correctly identify the potential for human error and how we need to accommodate for that. On the other hand, what we do not want to do is distribute funds to an organization for the processing of an individual who has evaded law enforcement and not been processed and put into immigration enforcement proceedings. We will work with you, and you have my commitment.
Thank you. This question is for the panel. Earlier this month, the FBI and DHS issued a joint public service announcement warning of an increase of reports of threats against Jewish, Muslim, and Arab communities and institutions due to the horrific terrorist attack in Israel and the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. From the senseless murder of a 6-year-old boy in Illinois to over 300 recorded anti-Semitic incidents between October 7th and October 23rd, hate and the threat of hate-based violence is exploding across the country. Director Wray, what additional steps is the FBI taking to track hate-based violence across the United States, and what additional support do you need from Congress? And for Secretary Mayorkas and Director Abizade, I was not close at all. How does the accuracy of data regarding hate-based violence or threats of violence help your organizations better protect the U.S.? Director Wray.
So we've done a number of things. First, we've increased the outreach to state and local law enforcement and others to improve the reporting of hate crimes, as well as outreach to faith-based communities, because one of the things we know about hate crimes is that they're chronically underreported. So we've had a lot of engagement there, and that undoubtedly contributes to the increase in reported hate crimes. But in addition to that, we've created a domestic terrorism hate crimes fusion cell to try to get at offenses, hate-based violent extremist offenses against the faith-based communities, which could be either domestic terrorism or hate crimes. And so the idea was to bring the expertise of both together. That has in turn led to some of the first proactive hate crimes cases, including in particular, the one that I can think of is a disruption of an attempted bombing of a synagogue. So we've had a number of cases like that that we're doing. So we've also elevated hate crimes to a national threat priority. So it's extensive outreach to faith-based communities and it's extensive investigations. Just in the few years that I've been director, we've had quite a number of attacks or attempted attacks on synagogues that we have disrupted. Attempted bombings of synagogues in Colorado and Nevada, attempted shootings up of synagogues in California. Obviously, we had the Colleyville situation. I personally have been to the crime scene at Tree of Life. So it is a major problem and something we're actively engaged in.
Forgive me, Senator, the tracking of information enables us to most ably and efficiently allocate the resources we have to the communities most in need at a particular time.
And Senator, our organization is focused on the foreign nexus of a threat, and anything that helps us better understand what's happening here domestically and understand it in the context of the global environment is critically important. So whether that's racially or ethnically motivated violent extremist attacks here, in Brazil, in Bratislava, whether that's Al-Qaeda or ISIS-inspired terrorist attacks here or in any other part of the world, that total picture of the global threat environment is absolutely critical to our understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Sinema. Senator Langford, you're recognized for your questions.
Chairman, thank you. Thank you all for being here. Secretary Mayorkas, let me set a context piece in there that you know extremely well. You served during the Obama administration as well, working on immigration issues. And you and I have spoken about this often, and you've been very clear to be able to say the system is broken. In fact, the last time we had this hearing, we had the same conversation. I pulled a quote on it. You said the asylum system is broken. Our entire immigration system is broken. There's unanimity about that. We have hope that Congress will reform a broken system. I went back and pulled the asylum numbers from 2010 to be able to see how many asylum requests did we have across our southwest border in 2010. In 2010, we had 21,000 asylum requests for the year across our southwest border. Now we often have that in 3 days. It's an enormous shift. You also had a piece that you just put out, an op-ed piece in the Washington Post, where you state that the supplemental funding request is not a long-term solution to a deep-seated problem. We need changes in our national immigration law. So I'd like to zero in on that conversation today. What are the key changes that need to happen in the law? And I'm going to go through quite a few issues here. Hit the high points. What are the things that need to be able to change?
Senator, we need a functioning system that marries labor supply with labor demand. We need a functioning system in the asylum arena so that our core value of providing humanitarian relief to those in need who qualify is actually executed with efficiency and with speed, and the ability to remove individuals who do not qualify is similarly executed with efficiency and speed. We need to provide a lawful pathway to citizenship for so many millions of people who have been resident in the United States and productive contributors to our country's prosperity. We need to take care of the young people who know no home other than America, the dreamers who have contributed so much. Those are some of the elements.
Several of those things don't reduce the number of people coming. They're dealing with people that are physically present here. And as you and I both know, if there's a family member physically present here, that incentivizes another family member to be able to come and to be able to join them. That actually accelerates the process. When we have 21,000 people requesting asylum in 2010, and we have millions now, how do we reduce that flow specifically on asylum? Is it clarifying the definition of asylum? What is that needs to happen on asylum?
So we have taken important steps in that regard within the context of a broken.
But is policy changes needed?
Yes, policy changes are needed, but let me, if I may, Senator, provide context. We have currently, right now in the world, the greatest number of displaced individuals in decades and decades, and that is true with respect to our hemisphere.
I get it, but I don't mean to interrupt on this. I am limited on time, but that doesn't excuse, for instance, the Wall Street Journal had a piece this past week about 45,000 Indians coming to the United States to request asylum, and it tracks the different flights of different countries they're going through, including France, to be able to get to the United States, to be able to catch a flight, to be able to get a truck, to be able to come over to our border and request asylum. So it's a very different thing to be able to say we have migration happening around the country when really what we have is a pull factor, one of the greatest economies in the world, that people that want to be able to come here to work go through the process to be able to do whatever it takes to be able to get here, because then they can request asylum and cross our border. They're going through multiple other countries that would definitely be safe countries to be able to go in, but they want to come to the United States, and I don't blame them. It's a great country, but they're not coming through a legal pathway in that. They're coming through with an asylum definition that's so broad that it's inviting them to come, and it's just accelerating. You agree or disagree with that?
Senator, there are many different concepts that you articulated in the statement preceding the question you posed to me. The asylum system needs to be reformed from top to bottom.
A lot of hypotheticals is all I can say. Whenever you're dealing with a complete total mess, that obviously, I hate to say it, my brother and I, before he passed, put this cross up out here, put it up sideways, indicating a broken cross or a broken system. Sorry. I don't know that my brother, if he was still living, he passed in 2017. I don't even know that he could comprehend or accept the things that's going on today versus what we was already looking at in 2014 whenever I first come back to Northwest Tennessee. I don't even think that it would be so psychologically damaging. I don't even know if he could stand it or not. And I've said that before about my dad and my mother and various loved ones that's already done passed. There's so much misbehavior going on right now. I guarantee you our ancestors are rolling around in their graves wondering, how could this have occurred? How could this have occurred? Wow.
Over time, they swiftly have moved away from those strong statements, and they're falling in line behind Donald Trump. either for political gain in 2022 or political gain in 2024. And so with the lack of leadership in the Republican.
Oh, God. Over and over.
Do you think
and
that's
over
the case
again.
here?
Well, that was my question. What?
Over and over and over again.
With the model that I outlined.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Langford. Senator Rosen, you recognize your questions.
Thank you, Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Paul, and for holding this important hearing. I also want to thank the witnesses for their testimony today, and Secretary Mayorkas, I want to thank you for working with my office and the entire Nevada delegation to ensure that the upcoming Formula One Grand Prix, just in a few weeks, has the federal interagency security support it needed. We raised that tier rating, and we appreciate it. I'm going to go right into border security, Mr. Secretary. As you know, fentanyl is destroying communities across the country. Nevada, no exception. According to the CDC, we lost a staggering 949 Nevadans to opioid overdose deaths in 2021 alone, and the problem only continues to get worse.
Good God.
As I've stated before, stopping the influx of these deadly drugs starts by strengthening our border security through a significant increase in resources. That's why earlier this month, I joined with several of my colleagues in urging President Biden to allocate additional funds and resources to end the flow of fentanyl at our southwest border. So, Mr. Secretary, as the Senate considers the administration's supplemental funding request and looks to prioritize what is most critical for that package, what additional resources can Congress allocate to DHS specifically to strengthen your ability, the department's ability, to detect and intercept fentanyl at our ports of entry so we can address the worsening crisis?
I don't think they can. I think it's so much of it right now that we're being inundated with. I mean, unless somebody can create some sort of a X-ray machine that can detect it from a mile off, and I don't think that's going to happen. I really think that this has come out of the pits of hell. I really do. And as far as I'm concerned, people that get caught with this should be looking at a death sentence, because this is killing people. This ain't just getting people high. This isn't just messing with people's whatever. This is killing people. And I'm beginning to wonder the same thing out of social media. As sad as that may sound, I've been telling people now for quite some time that it's going to turn out to be a Trojan horse. And whenever you're weaponizing by taking somebody's phone from them, which you know good and well that this in and of itself is going to plant a seed, and God only knows how many more other people out there that's already dim-witted to begin with. It's going to plant a seed towards people doing the exact same thing, towards apprehending people's phones while torturing that person on live social media. How much more can it be in becoming more grotesque? Just like all the gun violence, some idiot gets a hold of a gun, and you can do as much with some of these military style guns in 1 minute, in 60 seconds, than what you could do with a regular rifle or a gun in probably an hour. In 60 seconds, you can create more carnal death and destruction. And that's why those guns are designed and built the way that they are, pertaining to war. that, as far as I am concerned, if you can't stop them from being out on the streets, at least put stiffer regulations in people that's handling these type of guns, especially whenever they get caught doing something like this, of intensifying the punishment 1,000-fold, the same way as you do fentanyl. And I'm beginning to wonder if the people that design social medias, regardless of what media it may be, if maybe they shouldn't stand towards being held accountable for doing this too as well. Our lives are being torn apart right now by watching all the distress, all the harm, all the hurt, all the viciousness, all the barbaricness that's happening, not just across the pond, but right here in the good old USA. And it makes me sick. It makes me sick to know that every bit of this could have been steered away from. I can see where the sword that it talks about in the Bible, a great sword, I can see where the intensity of the greatness of this sword that's going to be representing peace, opening up the second seal. I can see now where this sword is becoming more and more predominant in its value as we see these chaotic moments that not just the American people are in, but basically the whole world. I mean, you'd have to have a 100-man group watching 5 TV broadcast services at the same time of different media entities all over the world to be able to keep up. That would be 500 screens with 100 people in order to keep up with everything going on in the world. And I don't even know that you could even do that with 100 people, with 500 screens, and every one of the screens would be focused on a different news agency, regardless of where they was. Of course, you'd have to interpret the languages and all that stuff. But there is so much going on right now in the world. It's absolutely mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling to the average normal person out there. And I'm gonna confess something. If I did not have the power of God around me and within me pertaining to the Holy Spirit, because of it being so radicalized, so aggressive, in seeing the intensity of all this, I don't think that I could deal with it. Not and still film it, put it on my social media platform, and discuss it and talk about it to be able to help either open other people's eyes or be able to help lead people in the right direction towards trying to prevent these horrible, horrible events that's now happening to all of us. We're all victims of this. I don't know if you can see that or not, but we are all victims of seeing this eruption happening in our lives that is affecting our emotions. It is affecting the way that we think. It is affecting how we feel about one another. It is affecting in our consciousness pertaining to our faith and where we are and who we are. And if this is doing this much to us as adults, that's supposed to be able to be in control of our emotions, in understanding that there's certain things that you just can't do nothing about, kind of like, the sun or the weather in general. you can only imagine what it would be like in a young adult, a very, very young, non-adult person with a juvenile type delinquent mind, of how devastating that it would be to that individual by sitting and just listening to what I have discussed and what I have filmed tonight in regards to all this. Now, if you'll multiply that by about, I think, 3,000, I think I got about 3,000 YouTube videos out there or something like that. Could you only imagine what it would be like? And I've said this before. If you was, let's say you was bedridden, and let's say you was in a nursing home, and all you could do was basically lay there, you could discuss things, you could comprehend things, you could eat, you could feed yourself, but basically you had nothing else to do with your time other than to watch the news. What would that be doing, first of all, to ourselves, if that was us? And secondly, what is that doing to people out there that are becoming so adapted in changing the norm of peace and utopia and love and grace and mercy and forgiveness to what we are evolving into? Could you only imagine what that would be doing to an elderly person that would basically be at their last brink of here living up onto the planet, if they was having to watch all this stuff on a day-to-day, everyday basis? It would bound to have an effect upon to their lifespan. You know, people that's got disabilities, regardless whether it's physical disabilities, mental disabilities, other types of disabilities, they got to struggle with their disabilities to be able to function in a world that's basically becoming unfunctionable. But they claim a lot of these children growing up that are messed up either mentally or physically, they're impaired. They claim that their life expectancy is very, very short. In other words, if they make it to 35 or 40 years old, they're really, really lucky. They're really, really lucky. Because they're constantly having to prove themselves or to try to blend in with the rest of society. But look what our society is turning into. Especially whenever you can take somebody's phone away from them, hit their Facebook page, open their social media up, and then either rape them or murder them or cut their heads off or do whatever you want to do to them. Why, the people that care about that person has to sit there and watch all that on it being live streamed. What in the hell are we turning into? The only way of defeating bad is the same way that the president of the NRA spoke about, of defeating a bad person with a gun is a good person with a gun. The difference in the motives is that the Christian that has the love of God in them knows if they don't respond and react to the bad, even at the expense in a negative way, by overpowering the evil, eventually the evil will consume us. And if that is the direction that the world wants to head off into, then continue to keep doing what we're doing, because I promise you it is going to be coming near a neighborhood near you. if we don't wake up and wisen up to what is happening to us. It's almost as if we have been inundated by this supernatural bewitching. And I've said this before during COVID, that you watch. I said this about 2 years ago. We will go to the extremes of trying to be merciful and pretending like we care about one another and saving lives with all the medicine and COVID shots and everything else, to the point that we're going to do a flip-flop, and we're in the center of the flip-flop right now towards going in the opposite direction. I have never in my life seen so much horror that is absolutely traumatizing. Like I said, I really don't think that my ancestors, those who have come before me, that have already passed, thank God they're in a better world. Thank God that maybe they're at peace in where they are. But I truly believe, especially going back to my grandparents, they could not begin to fathom the things that are happening today, that basically is coming out of a Twilight horror movie. But now we're in that movie. This is part of our story that we're having to deal with on a repetitiously, day-to-day basis. And instead of it getting better, in actuality, it's getting worse. So if there's ever been a time, whoever gets a hold of this material of mine, if there's ever been a time that we needed to bond together and pray for one another and combat our forces against these forces, it is today. Because if we don't watch, it will be to our Achilles heel of the ending of civilization as we know it. And I know those are some very, very powerful statements and some very, very powerful words that I just got through telling and making reference to, especially when it comes to social media. But if we do not have enough sense to put guardrails on what people does, especially in the abnormality of that, I have to ask the simple question, what is next? What are we going to have to accept of it becoming our norm, that we know, psychologically speaking, it is nowhere even close to being normal? As I said a while ago, it's as if we have been hijacked by this artificial intelligence that is now bearing on a great deal of us. And I know it would be bearing on your emotions if you had to sit there and watch your daughter or watch your mother or watch your children be violated on social media and even possibly killed. You would probably go through post-traumatic stress disorder, and who knows, it could actually drive people off into a state of shock to the point that they never would be able to be good for anything. I just made a statement a while ago to my cousin Joanne. She's over in Missouri, pertaining to Louis. I think now he's probably 19, maybe 20. Whenever I was out in California in 2012, Louis was about 12 years old. I explained to Joanne, because it's her daughter's son, that if I would have had any idea that he would have turned out to have been going through the problems that he's going through right now, I would have either stayed in California to be able to help Lewis, or I would have tried to have convinced Julie, which is my niece, of bringing him with me. He has went through so much trauma pertaining to his emotions, and right now he's living in a boys' home. He's constantly having to be doped up. His father is an alcoholic, and you know, we're talking about a kid that's basically broken out all the windows. We're talking about a kid that's basically tried to burn the house down. We're talking about a kid that has become extremely violent, that has to be restrained this way just to say that he's existing. And whenever I was out there in 2012, he was only about 12. I kind of halfway seen that there was probably a problem with him. But, you know, what 10 or 12 or 13 years old do you look at that you don't feel like that they got some sort of issue? And I was hoping and praying to God that he would, you know, eventually grow out of it, and that he would become extremely smart, and that he would be an asset to society. Now, his sister, on the other hand, which at that time was about already 15 or 16, she has dedicated her life. She's went over into the medical industry, and she's got a boyfriend. It's both of them got their act together, and they're working, and they're, you know, being an asset to society. But it really breaks my heart in me being out there, give or take, for about a month, maybe a little bit over a month, during the times that I was having to basically migrate from place to place, from state to state, from community to community, keeping the hounds of hell off of me, because it's harder to hit a moving target than it is a steel target. And plus, I was having to survive on my own. I didn't have nobody sponsoring me at the time. And I was basically out there riding the roads, going from one event to another event, hoping that I would be able to make a living with my hands and my head towards doing auto body work, and in which I did. God bless me in being able to put me in the right places at the right time towards being able to be self-sustainable. I really don't think that I could do it again. As a matter of fact, I know I couldn't do it again because of my health, but I don't believe that I could do it again now, going back basically 10 years ago versus where we are now, because it has become so violent and so vicious out on our streets. I'm pretty sure, I ain't completely sure, but I'm pretty sure that I would have had to have experienced some things that would have been so bizarre that it would have probably knocked me for a loop, or maybe even been shot at, or possibly even killed. I've seen some pretty bizarre things going on in Phoenix, Arizona. I've seen some bizarre things, you know, pertaining to people wrecking cars and then getting out of their vehicles and running like hell, knowing good and well that it was a bunch of illegals that was driving the vehicles that shouldn't have been on the road to begin with. Or people out in California stripped down bare naked, that had basically a sock over their tallywhacker while they was out there holding a protest sign of the 99 percenters against the 1 percenters. Are being in homeless shelter in New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico, towards actually witnessing and watching people die, gagging and throwing up and bleeding, and just a gory scene. Almost as bad in Miami district over there pertaining to all the Cubans. And it was as bad in ways in Atlanta, Georgia, whenever I was out there after the bubble burst in 208 and 209 of staying with the homeless out there, and also being hunted, being victimized by the law that was trying to make me out to be the monster, while the whole time they was the monsters, because now look what the monsters has done to us. The monsters has let us down, that was supposed to have been protecting us, that was supposed to have been watching our backs, and now look at where we are going, and where we are at, and where we possibly may end up going if we continue on this trajectory path. So the best that I can do as of right now in making these videos is to pray, and continue to pray, and continue to pray even more for my fellow man, and to believe that somehow or another God is going to exceed in these moments of despair, to the point of seeing a true Holy Ghost anointed revival break out up into the land. Because if it does not, as I have said routinely again and again, we are so close of seeing the glory of God coming. And whenever he comes, he's not going to be coming as a lamb. He's going to be coming as a lion in flaming fire, taking vengeance upon to those who do not know him, and upon to those who do not follow him. We are so close of seeing this planet be thrown off into great tribulation that it is absolutely frightening of knowing how close we are knocking on the door to devil's hell. Because if people think that things are bad now, whenever you get to looking at some of these horror movies like The Walking Dead or the zombie movies, that's what's going to happen whenever God returns back and takes what saints that are here, the believers that are here, takes them out. And he burns down every home, every business, everything that is burnable upon to the planet. You will see and be a part, not just see, but you actually be a part of some of the most goriest, nightmarish events during that time, that I feel quite confident that cannibalism will become a predominant thing during that time. And I just pray to God that God will be merciful unto all of us, and that heaven please help us all. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. God bless our endeavors towards where we go from here. God bless Jerusalem. God bless the Ukrainians. And God bless all the people out there that are being violated again and again and again by the hand of the evildoers that are being motivated by these evil demonic spirits that are now roaming our planet in such of a degree that I truly do not think that my ancestors could deal with this on a proper professional way. So if it's affecting people's minds and people's emotions like it is now, could you only imagine what it's going to be like if you miss out on the first global resurrection. So I pray, and I continue to pray, and I interventionally pray for people's hearts to be changed, and that we will awaken out of this obvious stupor that we're in. Like I said, it's almost as if we've been hijacked spiritually, supernaturally. We've been hijacked. And we're in a complete different warp zone, twilight zone today in comparison to just 10 years ago. Whenever I was out there driving around and going from city to city, from state to state, following catastrophes and doing the Lord's work, it has become so much more dangerous on the streets. And I guess one of the big things that that injected all of this was COVID. I think it's messed people up. A matter of fact, all the body shops that I talk to, no matter what state that it's in, will tell me that something has happened to the driving habits on the road because all of these body shops are full. Or most all of them are full. I don't know if people have finally figured out that the end is coming and they're trying to get every little inch that they can out of life before it actually happens. They're trying to juggle too many balls at the same time, or they're just not paying attention on the road. But the driving experiences pertaining to the wrecks, from what I can tell, has increased significantly since COVID. And I guarantee you, if you was to talk to many of the insurance companies, they would probably tell you the same. Especially whenever you get to looking at supply chain issues and the price gouging that's been going on, that basically OPEC, the oil petroleum companies, have demonstrated towards profiting more off of the backs of the citizens of this world last year than ever before. So you have to ask the question, or I do, what is next? What is next? What are we going to have to face off into and say, well, this is now our norm. We're just going to have to deal with it, honey. A lot of these children that are already struggling, they cannot deal with this. The people that's laid up in hospital beds, that are basically on their last leg, that are in retirement homes, cannot deal with this. It's too much. We have been hijacked, invaded. We have to bond together if we're going to be a surviving civilization. God bless and shalom.